like the previous Sarah, I'm actually just coming back from maternity leave. So the last 3 months or so, I haven't been the primary blogger for that, but we'll be going back as soon as this conference is over. So a little bit about EdWeek. How many people have heard of or read regularly? For those who don't, who are familiar with Chronicle of Higher Ed, we're kind of for K-12 what Chronicle of Higher Ed is for higher ed. And one of the fastest growing parts of the publication is our online presence. We have dozens of blogs, both news and opinion at this point, and have been growing that section considerably, as well as growing the opinion section of the paper. So everything Sarah said was absolutely correct, and in fact, I would encourage you even more strongly to get on Twitter, get on Facebook, start blogs, get in the conversation, because that is an increasing part of how we find sources and find stories. In normal business practice, I'm blogging daily, tweeting very regularly, particularly at conferences. And more than that, I'm looking at blogs and tweets, and particularly in conversations very frequently. In terms of finding your research, I and most of the other reporters there are on, we get regular subscriptions to all the major education and cognitive neuroscience, all of the research journals, as well as some of the listservs that send out pre-notices. And let me tell you, if you have something coming out in a journal and you want it to be covered, send an update, send an alert before it comes out, with enough time that the reporter will have enough time to read it, digest it, and get in touch with you. There are so many people who contact me about research that came out a year ago, or 6 months ago, or 2 weeks ago, and while some of that we can work into things, it's nowhere near as good as having the embargoed copy in advance. So let me step back a little bit. How many of you are, when you're talking about talking to the press more, how many of you contact the press directly when you have research that you want them to cover? How many of you rely on your university's, and how many of you don't pay any attention to it at all? If it's been, as long as it's published in a journal or something like that, then that's enough. Okay, I see your problem right here. There are good PR departments and bad PR departments from university to university, but one thing I can guarantee you is that they don't necessarily have the time to dedicate to promoting your particular line of research that you do. And I don't, while I will accept things from PR departments and am signed up to Eureka Alert and stuff like that, I am much more likely to respond to a researcher who is directly contacting me, particularly somebody that I know, have met at a conference, have seen speak. It's because it's partly about how much I know you will be able to speak intelligently to me about your research. If I know that you contacted me or that you are directly available news rather than I'm relying on whatever quote that may or may not be from you, because I know that your PR people will sometimes make up your quotes and have you sign off on them. I'm much more likely to pay attention to you reaching out to me. So how do you get started on that? This is a great way. Conferences very frequently are good places to meet, chat, be involved in the conversation, both via Twitter and directly. Just talking and getting to know the reporters on a given beat. While I am the direct research reporter at EdWeek, any reporter who covers a beat that coincides with your research area is going to be somebody that you should know and talk to every once in a while. Particularly because in terms of larger stories, if we know that there's a long-term study that's been chugging along for 5 years or 7 years and it's about to come to a head, and we've got some interesting results, knowing the people and having a relationship there makes it much more likely that we'll remember that, oh, this is coming out, and call you, which I'm sure would be easier for you guys. The second thing is, I mean, I can't emphasize enough the importance of just making contact and being available, calling, responding on internet time and not academic journal time. If you get an email or a phone call and you call back 2 weeks later, I don't need you anymore. And sometimes, even then, sometimes I can chat with folks and it will keep going from there. But the importance of being quickly available is essential if you want to be the person that a reporter calls on a regular basis. Another is to understand that you're not talking to other academics. You might be talking to educators, you might be talking to parents. When you're talking to me, talk as though you're talking to your 8th grade kid or a parent in a PTA group. So I understand p-values, but I don't want you to describe your findings in terms of p-values because I can't use that, and I'm trying to use as much of your voice as possible. If you have an intervention, you ought to know, you ought to be able to get a translation of approximately how much learning. Can you describe it at all? Is this something that might gain kids a couple months worth of schooling? I know that some of that might be a little difficult, but the people that I frequently talk to are ones who are good at saying, so here's this finding and it was significant, and it's really, I mean, the equivalent of getting a 2-month jump on your math class, or it might make the difference between kids understanding fractions at age 8 and then understanding them at age 12. Whatever you can do that will put a narrative on your findings and make it less statistics and more people, that's always good. The other side of that is, make sure that you've got good findings when you're contacting. It doesn't have to be positive findings. It could be something that there's an intervention that's gone around and everybody loves it and you're getting null set after null set. That could be really important. I like covering null findings when they're important null findings. I think we don't cover them enough. I think very frequently, both in papers and in journal regular journals, there isn't enough coverage of studies that find nothing when they thought they would find something. So don't be afraid to reach out on those. But you do have to show that you have a good sample size, that you are actually asking a question that hasn't already been asked and answered and covered 15 times before. If you're finding that kids who enjoy math perform better in math, then you need to have a really interesting hook on that, or it's kind of a duh thing, and it's much less likely to be written out. Other common mistakes I see. Not having the paper available if you want coverage soon. I don't want to write about things that I haven't actually read the paper, because I've seen too many pitches that the pitch of what they say the paper shows and what the paper actually shows are two totally different things. And that's another problem that very frequently comes up when you are relying on your PR department to pitch something. Sometimes I'll call the researcher based on a release that comes to me where they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. Or, no, I don't think you could really say that the kids actually learned better, but there was a mildly significant with Hispanic students during one thing, but I'm not sure that I really want you to say that that worked. If you can't actually stand behind your research and find something that you can say, then it's hard for me to write about. So where does all this leave you guys when you are churning through reports over studies over years, and who knows how often you're going to have that one great piece that you want to get across? Much more frequently, I will be writing about a topic and will need someone familiar, an expert, as Sarah mentioned, who can speak knowledgeably about that, who has conducted research in the past, has worked with other people who have conducted research and can speak on the validity of a piece of research that's come out, or can speak on the topic in general. That is a really good way both to get yourself out there as an expert, and to get reporters looking at your own research, because we tend to look at each other's stories and see what experts we're calling. And that, again, I have to go back to get in Twitter conversations, get in regular conversations at conferences, at if you are looking at a blog or looking at a story that you feel touches on your research area, write a comment. Write a non-flaming, preferably one with a valid question, or a comment that builds upon the research rather than just saying, I like this story. Because if you get us thinking about additional places that it could go, I very frequently find people that I later interview for other stories based on a particularly interesting comment they had in a story that I read about the same topic. And be relaxed. I know that you mentioned being scared of press. We're really not scary. You should make sure that you are speaking clearly and that I'm not getting confused about something, or the reporter, particularly if the reporter doesn't have a lot of experience with research but just covers schools in general. The more general they are, the more you'll have to be very clear in what you mean. But talking in non-academic jargon is great. And I found that the more uncomfortable the researchers are, the more they start going back and back and back into the most technical language they can possibly use. And it doesn't help them become more precise for my readers. It just means that I'm going to have to go back and try to translate everything that they say and then figure out whether it's worth putting in. The one other thing that Sarah mentioned that I wanted to go on is finding something in current news and current discussion that you're interested in, that touches on your research, that touches on things that you consider yourself expert in. When anything breaks, or whenever there's a hot issue in Congress or hot issue just in the research field, we'll be frequently trying desperately to find out more about it. Sometimes we might not know much about a particular area at all. Parental involvement in school choice. Okay, this has come up, and all of a sudden I'm not the normal researcher, I'm not the normal reporter to cover that, but the school choice reporter is also on maternity leave, and so I'm now doing it. That happens all the time, and when it happens, the reporters are going to be looking for sources, offering yourself through your blog, through direct contact again, through whatever way you can say, hey, I'm here, I know about this, at the time that the news is happening. It will help you get attention, get noticed. The one other thing, a recent story that I worked on, actually a while back, in August, I did a story about simulations of educators, almost like a medical standardized patient procedure. They were having standardized students and standardized teachers who were being trained the same way a medical standardized patient would be trained, in fact, by the medical school. And they were using them for principal training research to develop a new model for principal training. It was really neat. It was a very small, quirky little study that was in fairly early stages, and so normally wouldn't get a lot of attention. But I had happened to hear about it and about how the work was progressing at a conference 4 months before that, in a conversation over coffee. And if you are doing something interesting procedurally or interesting methodology, even if you don't have results yet, that can also be something to get in touch with people about. Think about whether it would be fun to tell people about what you were doing at a cocktail party. And if it's the sort of thing that people would say, oh, that's kind of cool, then people more broadly will think that's kind of cool too. I hate talking on my own, so I'm going to go to questions, since it seemed like people had a bunch of questions.
Those of us who are newbies like me, who would be the person that I need to look for if I do want to
what's your area of expertise?
Education, complexity theory, and how it applies the theory in general to practical teaching practices.
Teaching practices. Okay. So go on to, say, EdWeek, and you
Go to where?
go to edweek.org, or to another another newspaper, whatever place that